for exposing my mother after she let my sister take credit for saving our house? I'm Fiona. I was 34 then, the younger daughter in a family where my older sister, Claire, had always been described as warm, generous, and a little fragile. I was described as practical when people needed something and difficult when I asked questions afterward. Claire was 37. If she forgot a payment, she was overwhelmed. If I remembered what she owed, I was keeping score. If she arrived 40 minutes late to dinner, Mom praised her for making the effort. If I left before dessert because Mom had volunteered me to solve another problem, I was cold. I was also the person who knew where Dad's insurance papers were, which repair company had replaced the water heater, and why the tax office had once sent a second notice after Mom insisted the first one was just a duplicate. Dad kept an old document binder with cracked plastic tabs, and I had replaced those tabs so many times that the labels were all in my handwriting. For years, I thought being the difficult daughter was the price of being the dependable one. That dinner was when I realized my family had turned my silence into evidence against me. The pattern started with small rescues. One afternoon, Mom called while I was buying groceries and said Claire's car payment had been returned because of a banking error. She made it sound like the bank had personally targeted Claire. "It's only this once," Mom said. "She needs the car. You know how stressed she gets when these things happen." "How much?" There was a pause. 800 and something. 800 and what? "Fiona, does it matter?" "Yes." It was $864, including a late fee. I refused to send the money to Claire and paid the creditor directly. Then I texted Mom the confirmation number and asked when I would be repaid. 2 hours later, Claire wrote in the family group chat, "Mom saved me again. I seriously don't know what I'd do without you." Mom replied with 3 heart emojis. I called her. "You could tell her whose card was charged." "Oh, don't ruin a kind gesture." "It wasn't your gesture." "She's already embarrassed." "She doesn't sound embarrassed." Mom sighed the way she always did when I forced a simple fact into a conversation she wanted to keep emotional. "You always need credit." That sentence stayed with me, mostly because I hated that part of it was true. I did want credit. Not applause. Not a family award. I wanted someone to say, "Fiona handled it," instead of letting me absorb the cost while somebody else got thanked for being loving. Claire never repaid me. Months later, when I brought it up, Mom said it had become too awkward to discuss. That was how money worked in our family. The amount became less important the longer nobody paid it back, and asking about it became a character flaw. The house problem began about a year later. Mom asked me to come over on a weekday evening. She had spread papers across the kitchen counter but covered half of them with a dish towel when I walked in, as if I couldn't see financial trouble unless it was fully exposed. Dad was in the den watching television. Mom kept her voice low. "There's a situation with the house." "What situation?" "We had repairs. Insurance went up. Then there was the refinancing adjustment." "What adjustment?" She pushed a notice toward me. It referred to a repayment arrangement connected to missed obligations, late fees, and escrow shortages. The numbers were serious enough that I stopped being sarcastic. "How far behind are you?" "We're not behind exactly. This says past due. We entered a plan." "Does Dad know?" "He knows there were repairs." "That wasn't my question." Her eyes filled immediately. Mom could cry without changing her breathing. It was one of the reasons people believed she was calmer than I was. "Your father's health hasn't been good under stress." Dad had blood pressure issues, but he wasn't confused, incapacitated, or incapable of reading a statement. Still, Mom made it sound as though one honest conversation would put him in an ambulance. "He can't handle another shock," she said. "I'm fixing it." "You're asking me to fix it." "I'm asking you to help temporarily." There was a missing transaction page in the stack. When I asked for it, Mom said it must still be in the other room. She never brought it back. I should have walked into the den and told Dad everything. I know that now. Instead, I let Mom frame secrecy as protection. I told her I wouldn't hand her cash. I wanted the current balance, the monthly due dates, the annual tax and insurance obligations, and proof of every payment. I also told her I wouldn't participate if money was still being sent to Claire. Mom put one hand over her heart. "Why do you always bring your sister into everything?" "Because last month you paid her phone bill." She was between payments. That isn't a thing. She needed help. And now you need help. So no. I'm helping the house, not financing Claire through the back door. Mom promised 3 things. Dad would be told once the immediate crisis passed. Claire wouldn't receive more financial help. Every dollar I contributed would go toward the house-related obligations. I sent those conditions in an email that night. Mom replied, agreed. Please don't copy your father yet. I need to tell him gently. I also asked her to sign a simple acknowledgement that some of the payments were being tracked and were not automatically unconditional gifts. It wasn't a deed, a loan contract, or a magical claim to the house. It was a modest piece of paper confirming dates and amounts so nobody could later say I had imagined the entire arrangement. Mom signed it quickly. For the first few months I paid verified bills directly. A lender payment. An insurance shortage. A tax installment. Then Mom started sending me screenshots instead of statements. The portal is being difficult, she would say. Or, the amount changed after the fee posted. Or, it has to come from the household account or they won't apply it correctly. Some of that was plausible. Enough of it was plausible that I kept going. The temporary help lasted 43 months. I scheduled transfers a few days before the major due dates. I kept a spreadsheet with the date, purpose, amount, confirmation number, and whether I had received supporting documentation. The documentation column became more empty over time. Mom always said the crisis was almost over. Just through the insurance renewal. Just until the new payment schedule settles. Just until Dad's repair expenses stop piling up. Dad thanked both girls at Thanksgiving one year. I assumed Mom had finally told him I was helping. Then Claire smiled and said, "We do what we can." I looked at her. "What exactly do you do?" She laughed. "Here we go. I'm asking." Mom set down the serving spoon harder than necessary. "Can we have one meal without turning it into an audit?" Claire had brought a bottle of wine. I had brought replacement smoke detectors because Mom had mentioned 2 were chirping and Dad had removed the batteries. That difference summed up how the family saw us. Claire brought warmth. I brought things that prevented the house from burning down, then got accused of ruining the mood. Around that time, Claire began talking about the house as if its future had already been decided. "When this place is mine, I'm opening up that wall," she said once, pointing between the kitchen and dining room. I looked at Mom. Interesting use of when. Claire rolled her eyes. "You know what I mean." "No, I don't," Mom said. "Claire is the one who wants to stay close and take care of us. You're 63 and Dad is 66. Why are we discussing who takes over your house like you're both leaving next week?" "It's called planning," Claire said. I wanted to ask whether her plan included paying the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and repairs. Instead, I replaced the batteries in the smoke detectors and went home. The first document that changed my suspicion into something harder was a property tax notice. Mom had asked me to reorganize Dad's binder because she couldn't find the updated insurance declaration. While I was sorting papers at the dining table, I found a past due notice tucked inside a folder labeled Appliance Warranties. The amount should have been covered by a transfer I had sent 3 weeks earlier. Beside the amount, someone had written C. Ins. in blue ink. I photographed the notice. Mom walked in while I was still holding it. "What is that?" "You tell me." She took it from my hand. That was resolved. My transfer was for this amount. It was all handled together. What does C-ins mean? I don't know. Automatic payments don't write initials in blue ink. Her face tightened. You are becoming paranoid. I want the statement. I'm not giving you access to our private accounts. I didn't ask for access. I asked for proof of what my money paid. You make generosity sound like a contract. At this point, it's a spreadsheet. She told Dad I was upset about paperwork. He came into the room and asked us both to lower our voices. I almost showed him the picture on my phone. Instead, I let Mom interrupt and say she had already explained everything. That was another moment when I chose the easier lie. After that, I stopped sending unrestricted transfers. I told Mom I would pay only verified obligations directly. She accused me of treating her like a criminal. 2 days later, Claire called. Why are you making Mom send you every bill? I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone. How did you hear that? Mom and I talk. Apparently. She's humiliated. She asked me for money. She's your mother. That doesn't answer the question. You always have to control everything. I almost hung up, but something in her tone bothered me. Do you know what I've been paying? No. Not really. Then why are you involved? Because she's crying. That answer was believable. Claire had spent most of her life responding to Mom's emotions and avoiding the numbers underneath them. I told myself she probably didn't know. Then came Aunt Denise's birthday dinner. Claire arrived late, carrying a bakery box she had picked up on the way. Aunt Denise hugged her and said, "You've been so good to your parents through all this. Marilyn tells me you've really stepped up." Claire looked briefly at Mom. Then she smiled. "We're family. You don't keep receipts for kindness." I felt the sentence like a slap because it sounded rehearsed. I said, "Name one bill." The table went quiet in stages. Claire's smile disappeared. "Excuse me. One bill you paid." "Fiona," Dad warned. "I'm curious." Mom leaned toward me. "Not tonight." Claire said, "I help in other ways." "Which ways? Why are you doing this?" Because apparently asking for one example is an attack. Claire pushed her chair back slightly. "You can't let anyone have a nice moment." I said, "Convenient," and immediately knew I had gone too far for the setting, even if I hadn't gone too far for the truth. Dad told me to stop. Aunt Denise looked embarrassed. Mom spent the rest of the dinner comforting Claire, who had arrived late, accepted praise for my support, and still became the injured person. I left before cake. On the drive home, I felt ashamed of my delivery and furious that everyone used my poor delivery as an excuse to ignore the fact that Claire couldn't answer. A week later, I found the property plan. Mom had created a shared digital folder for household documents and sent me a link because she wanted me to upload an insurance receipt. Buried in an old email chain was a file titled Family Understanding. It said Claire should receive the first opportunity to take over the house at a deeply discounted figure because she was expected to provide care and preserve family traditions. It described me as financially independent and already provided for. There was a blank signature line for me beneath a paragraph waiving objections to the arrangement. Claire's signature was already on it. So was Mom's. Dad's line was blank. I printed the document and read it 3 times. The house had traditions I cared about. Dad carved the Thanksgiving turkey with the same old knife every year. Mom stored handwritten recipes in a tin above the refrigerator. When I was a teenager, I had helped Dad stain the porch railing and left one darker patch near the steps that never matched. I had never imagined owning the house. What I had imagined was continuing to belong in it. The document made me sound like an outside investor who had already received her share. I called Mom. "You planned my signature before you planned to tell me." She was silent long enough to confirm she knew exactly what I meant. "It's not a legal document." "Then why does it need my signature?" "It's about avoiding conflict later. You wrote that Claire should get the house because she supports you. She will be the one providing care. She can't keep her car insurance current." That was a difficult period. It has been a 12-year difficult period. You are stronger than your sister. I thought you understood that. There it was. Claire's weakness was a reason to protect her. My competence was permission to use me. I asked whether Dad had seen the plan. Mom said, "We've discussed the general idea." That meant no. I didn't confront Claire. Not yet. I began preparing the folder. I printed a concise ledger instead of the entire spreadsheet. I included the signed acknowledgement, direct payment receipts, the past due notice, and the family property plan. I didn't yet have proof that money had been redirected. I had suspicion, missing statements, and a pattern of lies. I wanted enough to prevent Mom from announcing the arrangement as if it were settled. Then Mom invited everyone to dinner to discuss the family's future. Claire texted me separately. "Please don't make this tense." I replied, "Is the house being discussed? It might come up. Has anything been decided?" "No." A minute later she wrote, "Don't punish me because Mom trusts me with the house." I stared at the message. That sounds decided, I replied. She wrote, "It basically is, but nothing is signed." Then she deleted both messages. I had already taken screenshots. The dinner included Aunt Denise, her husband, 2 cousins, Claire, my parents, and me. Mom had made roast chicken and set out the good dishes. I brought a new carbon monoxide detector because the one near the laundry room had expired. Claire arrived 25 minutes late and apologized to everyone except me. After dinner, Mom stood with her wineglass and said she wanted to talk about the future while everyone was together. She praised Claire for being emotionally present, and the daughter who has always understood that family is more than numbers. Then she looked at me. Fiona has her own way of helping, but she can be very transactional. Claire has shown us that she is willing to put family first. Your father and I believe she has earned the first opportunity to take responsibility for this house when the time comes. Claire lowered her eyes modestly. Aunt Denise smiled. Dad looked confused, not shocked, which told me Mom had given him some softened version beforehand. Mom continued, "We hope Fiona will respect that and not turn this into a financial argument." That sentence was the reason I had brought the folder. I reached under my chair and placed it beside her plate. "Claire understands that family is more than numbers," Mom had said. I opened the folder. Then she should be comfortable reading them. Mom's face went white. "Sit down," she said. "I am sitting." Claire said, "Seriously." I slid the past due notice and the 43-month ledger toward Dad. "These are the payments I made toward the house obligations Mom told me were in danger. This is the written acknowledgement. This is the notice I found after one of those payments should have cleared it. And this is the plan that says Claire deserves the house because she supported you." Dad picked up the ledger. His eyes moved down the dates. "What is this total?" "The documented amount I can prove. There were smaller payments I didn't include because I don't have complete records." Mom reached for the pages. Dad pulled them away. He pointed to 3 dates. "I sent money those months." The room changed. Not dramatically. Nobody screamed. Aunt Denise stopped smiling. Claire crossed her arms. Mom began gathering plates that didn't need to be gathered. Dad looked at her. "Marilyn, I sent you the house payment every month. You sent household money. You said it was for the repayment plan. It all goes into the same household." I said, "That is exactly what I've been asking about." Mom snapped, "This is not the time." "You selected the time, the audience, and the topic." Claire said, "Those papers are old bookkeeping." I turned to her. "Then explain the current notice." She looked at Mom. Dad asked, "Why was Fiona paying this if I was paying it?" Nobody answered. I said, "My next transfer is paused. No property decision should happen until every account is disclosed and independently reviewed. I am not signing that waiver." Mom's voice became low and sharp. "You came here planning to humiliate us. I came prepared because you came planning to pressure me in front of witnesses." I stood to leave. Claire said, "You can't just stop paying. What happens to the house?" The question landed harder than anything else that night. Not what did Mom do? Not why did Fiona have to pay? What happens when Fiona stops? I looked at her and said, "I guess the daughter who earned it will have to find out." That was cruel. I knew it as soon as I said it. I also knew it was true. Dad called me before I reached home. He wasn't ready to defend me. He was angry. "Why didn't you tell me? Mom said you couldn't handle the stress. And you agreed? I thought I was protecting you. For 4 years. I kept expecting her to tell you. You had a folder, Fiona." "Yes. You let me sit at that table and find out in front of everyone. Mom was about to publicly promise away a house I helped keep current while calling me selfish. That doesn't answer why you kept me uninformed." He was right. I pulled into my driveway but stayed in the car. "I was wrong not to tell you," I said. "I also wanted proof before you decided I was attacking Mom." Dad was quiet. Then he said, "I trusted your mother. That sentence is how we got here." He hung up. The family group chat started before I made it inside. "Denise, please give your father a day to process this." Claire. She froze everything without warning. Fiona. I paused the next transfer. I didn't freeze anyone else's money. Marilyn. This is exactly the kind of technical language that makes you impossible. Fiona. Accuracy isn't a personality defect. One cousin wrote that financial issues should stay private. Another asked whether the house was actually in danger. Aunt Denise told me there had to be a way to handle it without an audience. I replied, it stayed inside the family for 4 years. That's how it kept happening. Then I stopped arguing. I sent one message asking for complete statements, payment histories, and the current status of every house-related obligation. I said future communication about money needed to be in writing. Claire wrote, Mom used the money where the family needed it. I replied, which need are you referring to? She didn't answer. Several messages disappeared later. I had already saved them. I spent the next week reviewing only records I lawfully possessed. My own bank statements, receipts, emails sent to me, screenshots Mom had provided, and documents in the shared folder she had invited me to use. The first trace came from an old bank alert. I had transferred a large payment into the designated household account on a Monday. On Tuesday, there was an outgoing transaction with an abbreviation I recognized because Claire had once complained about the same creditor after surrendering a vehicle she could no longer afford. The amount was not identical. It was smaller by a few $100s. That mattered. I didn't want anger to turn every coincidence into proof. So I checked another month. Then another. Several times, money from me entered shortly before payments connected to Claire left. In some months, legitimate house expenses also posted. In others, the house obligation remained late while Claire's creditor, insurance, or credit card received money. It stopped looking messy and started looking designed. I built a timeline and labeled each item confirmed, likely, or unknown. I didn't count anything I couldn't support. Not every blank was a crime. The parts one could prove were enough. Dad finally agreed to meet me with his statements. He arrived carrying the battered binder with my handwritten tabs. I don't know the account password, he said. Why not? Your mother handles it. I looked at him. He lifted one hand. I know. Don't say it. We went through his records at my dining table. For years, he had transferred the same monthly amount to Mom, believing it was being applied to the repayment arrangement. During many of the same months, I had paid the shortfall Mom told me Dad couldn't cover. Dad tapped one line with his finger. I remember this. She said the payment changed. I showed him my transfer from 3 days earlier. He leaned back. So 2 of us thought we were paying the same thing. Yes. Where did the rest go? I can prove some of it. I can't prove all of it. He looked older in that moment, but I refused to make him innocent. You signed a modification form without reading the attached schedule, I said. His mouth tightened. I trusted my wife. You also stopped asking questions when the answers made you uncomfortable. He stared at me. Then he nodded once. Do not make me innocent in this, he said quietly. I stopped asking. The worst evidence came from an old email chain that had been forwarded to me months earlier by accident. I found it while searching for the property plan file name. Claire had written to Mom. Did Fiona cover the big house payment again? I'm asking because if the plan changes, I need to know. You said the house promise was safe. Mom replied. Fiona will keep doing it. She needs to feel useful. Don't bring it up. Claire's answer was, okay. I just don't want her using it later to block me. That sentence hurt. But Mom's hurt more. Fiona will keep doing it. She needs to feel useful. For 4 years, I had told myself I was protecting Dad, preserving the house, and being the responsible daughter. Mom had understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. I was also paying for a chance to be needed. I consulted an attorney named Lena for a limited review. I brought copies, not drama. She read the acknowledgement, the property plan, and the payment records. I can explain what these documents may support, she said. I can't promise how a court would treat every payment. State law, title, the wording, and the surrounding facts all matter. I'm not asking for the house. That's good, because paying expenses doesn't automatically make it yours. I want to stop being pressured into signing something. Then don't sign a waiver because someone calls it a family form. She advised me to preserve records, communicate factually, avoid threats, and make no claim I couldn't prove. I also met with an independent financial counselor named Evan. Dad came to the second meeting. Evan separated our timeline into columns. This is confirmed, he said. This is unexplained. Don't merge them. Dad asked whether Mom had committed fraud. Evan didn't take the bait. I'm not making a legal conclusion. I'm showing you that two people believe they were funding the same obligation. The problem isn't only the amount. It is the representation. He showed us several outgoing payments that aligned with debts Claire had previously discussed in family messages. A vehicle deficiency balance. Insurance. A personal credit card. Dad's face reddened. That was my money. And mine, I said. He looked at me. Why didn't you tell me? This time I didn't defend myself. I thought I was protecting you. Then I kept quiet because I wanted Mom to finally admit I was the one holding things together. I was wrong. Dad looked down at the table. I'm angry at her, he said. I'm also angry that you decided I couldn't handle the truth. I know. That was the first honest conversation we had about my role in the secrecy. After the professional review, I ended every informal arrangement. I canceled the automatic transfer from my account. I removed Mom's access to a card in my name that she had used for household emergencies. Claire was still an authorized user on that card from a trip years earlier, so I removed her too. I required all future financial requests by email with supporting documents. I made the changes before announcing them. 3 days later, Claire called me 6 times. When I answered, she said, "My insurance payment was rejected. You need to pay it." I thought Mom handled it. Mom was using my card. You could have warned me. I warned Mom in writing 4 years ago that my money was not to be redirected to you. I didn't know it was your card. You knew I was covering the big house payment. That is not the same thing. No, it's worse. You knew I was funding the house, you knew Mom had promised you the house, and you were worried I might use my own payments to object. Claire went quiet. Then she said, "Mom handled the money. Why are you acting like I designed this?" I'm not. I'm acting like you accepted the benefits. You could have said no. I should have. You can afford it. I almost laughed. That is not permission. I can't fix 4 years of this in 1 week. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to start paying your own bills this week. She told me I had always hated that Mom worried about her. I said, "You treated my ability to pay as your permission to benefit." She said every favor from me came with a receipt. I replied, "Only the ones everyone later pretends I never made." A few days later, Mom arranged a family meeting. She told Aunt Denise that I had selectively presented documents, endangered the house, manipulated Dad, and cut off essential payments without notice. She wanted me to attend and correct the impression I had created. I agreed on 2 conditions. Dad would receive all copies in advance, and the meeting would be about records, not an apology. Mom said I was turning the family into a courtroom. I said, "Then stop inviting witnesses." The meeting was held at my parents' house. Mom had coffee and pastries arranged as if food could make the conversation polite. Claire sat beside her. Aunt Denise and her husband came. 2 relatives joined by video call. I brought numbered packets. The originals stayed in my bag. Before I handed anything out, I let Mom speak. She said she had moved money around during difficult periods because people needed help. She said Dad had approved the household budget in general. She said Claire knew nothing about the details. She said I had voluntarily helped and was now using generosity as leverage because I resented Claire's future caregiving role. Then she said, "I was trying to keep this family together." I asked, "Are you finished?" She looked offended. "I suppose." I took out a notebook. "Did Dad know the full amount I contributed?" "He knew you helped." "That wasn't my question." "He knew enough." Dad said, "No, I didn't." Mom turned to him. "Robert, please." I continued. "Did you tell me no money would be redirected to Claire?" I said I would do my best. I opened the email. "You wrote, agreed. You always interpret everything literally." Aunt Denise rubbed her forehead. I asked, "Did you tell relatives Claire was helping with the house?" "She was helping emotionally." "Did you use that phrase when you said she had stepped up financially?" I don't remember every conversation. Did Claire know I was making recurring payments? No. Claire shifted in her chair. I looked at her. Do you agree with that? She hesitated. I knew you were helping sometimes. I handed out packet 1. It contained the concise ledger, direct payment confirmations, and the signed acknowledgement. Packet 2 contained Dad's matching monthly contributions. Packet 3 contained the house statements, posting dates, late fees, and the notice that remained unpaid after one of my transfers. Packet 4 contained confirmed payments to Claire-related creditors and the supporting messages identifying those accounts. Packet 5 contained Claire's email asking whether I had covered the big payment again and whether the house promise remained safe. Packet 6 contained the property plan and the blank waiver line for me. I didn't speak while they read. The silence was not peaceful. Papers shifted. Someone on the video call muted themselves. Claire flipped back to the email twice. Dad pointed to his own transfer. This was mine. Mom said. It was household money. You told me it was the repayment payment. I moved things around because Claire was in trouble. Dad's voice rose, but he didn't shout. So you used my money and Fiona's money, let the house stay late and paid Claire? It was not like that. What was it like? Claire was going through a difficult time. Claire said, I didn't ask for all of this. I looked at her. You asked whether the house promise was safe while I covered the payment. I didn't know the amount. You knew it was recurring. I thought you could afford it. Aunt Denise said, Claire, that is not an answer. Mom began crying. You are all acting as if I stole from myself. I said, I asked where the money went. I didn't ask whether you meant well. You always make generosity sound ugly. No. I make the accounting visible. She pointed at me. This is why people can't talk to you. Everything becomes evidence. I felt the familiar urge to sharpen the knife until nobody could miss the point. This time I kept my voice level. You spent my money, handed Claire the credit, and then used my silence to prove I was selfish. Nobody interrupted. That was the moment I had imagined. The room finally understood. Mom had no softer story ready. Claire couldn't hide behind not knowing every figure. Dad saw his own transfers in black and white. And I enjoyed the silence. That is the part one am least proud of. I had chosen the dinner because Mom chose an audience first. I had chosen the family meeting because she tried to use an audience again. But I also wanted her exposed. I wanted Claire to feel what it was like to sit in a room while the family's version of you collapsed. Dad closed his packet. The property plan is suspended, he said. Mom said, you can't decide that while you're upset. It's my house too. Claire looked at him. So what am I supposed to do? He stared at her. Pay your bills. She began crying then, not dramatically. She looked scared and angry and younger than 37. For 1 second, I saw the sister I used to help with homework, not the woman who had accepted my money as background noise. I still didn't restore the card. I told everyone the same thing. I wouldn't resume informal funding. I wouldn't sign the waiver. I wouldn't participate in any property decision without independent review and complete disclosure. I would share records with Dad, but I would not make another payment. Mom said I was endangering them. I said no. I'm ending an arrangement that depended on lying to everyone involved. Dad asked the relatives to leave. As I stood, Aunt Denise said quietly, I believe the papers. I still think the dinner was cruel. I know. There had to be another way. There were 43 months of other ways. That didn't make her agree. It only made her stop trying to solve the conversation. The consequences were slower and less dramatic than the family had predicted. Nobody instantly lost the house. Nobody was evicted. There was no magical court order giving me ownership. Dad removed Mom's sole control over the household accounts. They opened new access credentials, set up alerts for both of them, and began reviewing statements together. Evan helped them create a budget that separated house obligations from personal assistance. The repayment arrangement remained active, but they had to cut spending and address late fees that could no longer be hidden. Refinancing was discussed and rejected as too risky under the circumstances. Downsizing became a real possibility if they couldn't maintain the plan. The house decision was formally put on hold. Dad told Claire there would be no discounted transfer based on a private understanding he had never approved. Any future sale or transfer would require independent valuation, legal review, and agreement between both owners. Claire's promised shortcut disappeared. She had to arrange her own insurance and negotiate payment plans with her creditors. She called the amounts small, while being unable to cover them without help. Mom tried twice to ask whether I could make one payment, just until Claire caught up. I replied by email both times. No. Some relatives apologized for believing Mom's version. Others focused on my method. One cousin said the documents were convincing but the public exposure was vindictive. Aunt Denise continued to believe I should have handled it privately, though she stopped telling me to be the bigger person after I asked whether she wanted to contribute to Claire's expenses. She didn't. Dad and I rebuilt trust slowly. He was angry with Mom's deception and with my secrecy. He didn't let me rewrite myself as the lone honest person in the family. You helped keep me in the dark, he said during one conversation. I know. You also kept paying after you knew something was wrong. I know. Why? The answer changed depending on the day. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to prevent the house from slipping further behind. I didn't trust Mom, but I still wanted her approval. I wanted proof that being dependable made me valuable. I wanted Claire to finally need something she couldn't smile her way into receiving. None of those reasons made the arrangement healthy. Dad admitted his own part too. I chose peace over understanding, he said. Your mother gave vague answers, and I accepted them because the details made me feel stupid. That was the closest he came to explaining 43 months of avoidance. Mom's apology arrived by text. I am sorry this made you feel unappreciated. I was under enormous pressure and made choices for the family that you may not understand. I replied. You are apologizing for my reaction because you still will not name what you did. She didn't answer for 2 weeks. Claire sent a longer message. She said Mom had controlled the information, that she never understood the full amount, and that I had always used money to feel superior. Some of that was unfair. Some of it was not. I had used records as armor because normal conversations in our family dissolved into tears, guilt, and claims about intention. I had also learned to enjoy being the only person who knew where everything was, because competence was the one role nobody could take from me. I told Claire I didn't believe she designed the scheme. I also told her she knew enough to question it, and chose not to because the arrangement benefited her. She replied, I don't know how to fix this. I wrote, start by not asking me to pay for it. We didn't speak for several months. The hardest boundary was not canceling the transfers. It was refusing the emergencies that followed. One night, Mom emailed a screenshot of a payment due the next morning. The subject line was, your father's house. For 10 minutes, I sat with my banking app open. I could have paid it. The amount was manageable for me. Dad would have been relieved. Mom would have thanked me, maybe even sincerely. Then the arrangement would have begun again. I closed the app. I forwarded the screenshot to Dad and wrote, this needs to be handled through the plan you established with Evan. I will not fund it. Dad responded, understood. No guilt. No lecture. Just one word. That felt more respectful than any praise Mom had given me. A few weeks later, I went to my parents' house to retrieve my personal records and spare key. The drawer labels in my handwriting were still there. Insurance, tax, repairs, warranties. Mom watched from the kitchen doorway. You're acting like you're leaving the family. I'm taking my documents. You don't have to make everything symbolic. I'm not. I need the key removed from my ring. She looked at the folder in my hands. I did what I thought I had to do. You thought Claire needed protection. She did. And you thought I didn't. You were always capable. That was never permission. She looked tired. For once she didn't cry. I left the spare key on the counter. Months later, Mom invited me to a closure dinner. She said Dad wanted everyone together. When I asked who would be there, she said Claire. When I asked whether money would be discussed, she said, only if we can approach it with compassion. That meant another request. I declined in writing. I am not funding another emergency, signing away an interest, or attending a dinner designed to make me apologize for producing records. Dad called later and admitted the dinner had included a plan to ask whether I would help Claire catch up on 2 accounts so she could start fresh. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I should have told you before." Yes. That was how trust returned between us. Not through one emotional speech but through small moments when he stopped choosing the comfortable version. The house remained with my parents. The discounted transfer to Claire was abandoned. Their independent review concluded that keeping the house would require strict budgeting and no more hidden support. They agreed that if the plan failed, they would sell and downsize rather than ask me to rescue it again. Claire found cheaper insurance, sold some things, and took on additional work. She didn't become a different person overnight, but she stopped talking about the house as hers. Mom no longer controlled the family narrative so easily. Too many people had copies. That didn't make every relative side with me. It only made it harder to call me selfish without confronting what I had paid. I keep limited contact with Mom and Claire. I don't discuss money by phone. I don't respond to requests disguised as invitations. I no longer maintain Dad's binder, though I showed him how to organize the digital records himself. For a long time I thought the worst loss was the money. It was not. The worst loss was realizing I had mistaken usefulness for belonging. I had believed that if I kept the accounts current, solved the emergencies, and swallowed enough resentment, my family would eventually describe me as loving. Instead, my silence made it easier to describe Claire that way. I was right to stop paying. I was right not to sign the waiver. I was right to force transparency before anyone made decisions about the house. I also know I chose the dinner because Mom chose the audience first, and I chose the second meeting because part of me wanted everyone to watch her lose control of the story. I was right to stop paying. I am still not sure whether I needed the whole table to watch me do it. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.